And so I've tried over the last 25 hours and 1 minute to center the conversation back on what will we do of good conscience. And so I end by saying simply this: where I started was John Lewis. I don't know how to solve this. I don't know how to stop us from going down this road, but I know who does have the power: the people of the United States of America. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. It is time to heed the words of the man I began this whole thing with, John Lewis. He said for us to go out and cause some good trouble, necessary trouble, to redeem the soul of our nation. I want you to redeem the dream. Let's be bold in America with a vision that inspires, with hope that starts with the people of the United States of America. That's how this country started. We, the people. This is a moral moment. It's not left or right. It's right or wrong. Let's get in good trouble. My friend, Madam President, I yield the floor.
Stand up.
Hi there. This is my first show back in almost a week. I'm so happy to have you here today. You will hear my conversation with author, speaker, activist, and all-around very cool guy. We learned even more of that evidence that he is. Tim Wise joins us. My interview in front of the live audience at Podjam last week. That conversation starts at about 34 minutes in. You want to jump to it, but I hope you'll stay because it got your news headlines, audio clips, and a little commentary from me here at the top. First, I want to say thank you to everybody who reached out since my last posted conversation with the divorce coach for men, Rachel Sloan. I haven't had that kind of positive feedback on any interview or guest in a very long time. Many of you said it was either the best conversation I've ever had or posted or one of the best. So if you haven't heard my conversation with Rachel Sloan, I hope that you'll go back and listen to episode 1322, the last episode. If you're following along, I'm really going to try to talk more about dealing with midlife crisis related issues, which of course include transitioning out of long-term relationships. And that interview got so much feedback, including lots of folks that took me aside in Las Vegas at Podjam. It sounds like I'm making shit up, but it really was overwhelming. And I'll be posting my conversation with Rachel Sloan on YouTube tomorrow. I want to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/standupwithpete. There's a link in the show notes. If you don't have a YouTube account, go create one and just subscribe for free, as you should be able to do if you have a Gmail account. It's pretty easy. If you don't already have a Gmail account, make one for this purpose, because subscriber numbers matter on YouTube, and that is the way forward in terms of growth for this show on YouTube, as well as every other 1 billion podcasts out there. You've got to be on YouTube. It's the best, really the primary way to grow. Substack as well, but that is what I'm promoting right now. Please go subscribe to that. You can watch my interview with Rachel and much more. I hope to be posting there every day. We will see if I can. Also, I want to mention I'll be interviewing Michael Ian Black live this Thursday here in Rockland County, or more importantly, Congressional District 17. There are a few districts left, but we're going to be really going after the incumbent, who will probably be running again. It's Mike Lawler, Republican Mike Lawler, and Michael Ian Black have had some history, and Michael Ian Black is going to settle it on Thursday night right here in the district that hopefully he will lose to a Democrat in. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to join us Thursday night. It also means I won't be able to host a Hangout Thursday night, but I'll probably do that on Friday. And now to Podjam last week. Last week we gathered in person for the second annual Podjam in Vegas. Thanks to Cassie, who produced the entire thing. Thank you to Ophira for convincing me to do it again. Along with Cassie, thank you for Mindy for her huge donation and many others. The big news is we broke even. Last year Podjam lost a lot of money on its expenses. This year we broke even. So next year, hopefully we'll be able to do it again, and we'll be able to actually make a little bit of money for the producers of the show. Of course, all of us got paid, and we were really, really happy to do it, and I hope that we can do it again. It really was an amazing time. The feedback I've been getting is overwhelmingly positive, and we'll wait to see if anybody caught COVID. It does look like Dr. Barry Hummel contracted Ebola. So if your voice starts getting hoarse, you may want to look into that. That was the first sign of it for him. I hope you're feeling better, Barry Hummel, and I hope that mandolin that you bought and traipsed around the entire frickin' country made it home safely. I have word that it did. Also, should mention that Dr. Barry Hummel has one of our favorite listeners and regular guests now on the show, Bill Boyle, on his show. He and Abigail hosted an episode as well from Podjam that I appear on, but check that out because it drops, I think, on Thursday, the conversation with Bill Boyle boil pops on hops. For the next few days on the show, I'm going to share people's thoughts on Podjam as well as online. So if you joined us, please email me or send a voice message. I'll share it with the group. If you want to, any part of that, by the way, to be private, just designate that, because I'm looking forward to sharing those right here on the show and online. Looking forward to hearing from anybody who attended. Send me your email with how you felt, what you feel like it was, so we can debunk all the myths that people have that it's just one giant orgy cult. It is not. We had an amazing time. And now here with proof of that is a message from our friend Kim Nybor. Kimmer in Iowa put in the Discord chat. She wrote, "What can I possibly say about Podjam Part 2? I found myself so emotional as I got ready to check out of my hotel on Sunday morning, packing up and reliving all the memories from the weekend. It was worse as I left from my plane, thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. Why am I getting so emotional leaving this 3-day trip? It's because this group brings out the best in me. I'm at my best when I'm surrounded by the people of this community. Some of my emotions were likely exhaustion. I haven't seen 2, much less 3 a.m. for an extremely long time, but I just didn't want the weekend to end. This cult is the best, and I'm forever grateful to Pete for bringing us together and for every member of this group for accepting me in exactly as I am. I don't have a lot of spaces in my world where I get to be 100% authentic. Here, it's not only allowed, it's expected. You make me want to be my best and give every piece I have to give. From theological discussions to mom chats and judgment-free zones, I hope everyone has people in their lives that make them feel the way y'all make me feel about myself. I woke up Monday morning a little melancholy, missing my peeps. I wanted to start thinking about our next get-together immediately. Genuinely disappointed that I only got to spend 3 days in person with everyone. I wonder if maybe it's because all of what's going on in the country and how good it felt to be around sane, like-minded humans. All my love, Kim." Yeah, Kim. Oh, man. I got emotional reading that, but luckily it was the third time I read it. So this time I could get through it. Thank you so much, Kim, and please send me your thoughts, whether it be voice message or an email on your experience so I can share it, and we can use them as testimonials for future live events for those who might hesitate for any number of reasons joining us live. And so I look forward to hearing from you. And finally, I also just want to mention it is April 2nd. Welcome to April. Happy April. And please check your credit cards. One conversation I had reminded me that I should be saying this towards the end of every month, the beginning of every month, because you can see subscribers numbers drop just a few every month because credit cards are unable to be charged as a result of you're not realizing that they expired. So if your credit card is expired, then I don't get paid, but you still get to listen. So thank you to Sean who mentioned that to me, and please go check your credit cards and make sure that that's not the case with however you pay over at Patreon if you're a paid subscriber. And if you are not, I cannot do this without your support. So please sign up at patreon.com/Pete Dominic and get all the benefits of being a paid subscriber, supporting independent media and helping us sustain and grow this community. All right. Well, that is the kind of housekeeping I wanted to do here at the top. And now let's get to today's show, starting with the headlines. Then I've got your clip show, your clips, and then on to my conversation with Tim Wise from Podjam. All right, well, let's get to those headlines. The big story yesterday, well, there were a lot of them, but as Heather Cox Richardson writes in her daily newsletter, the people spoke today in special elections. Republican candidates in Florida won by about 14 points in each of 2 U.S. House races, but just 5 months ago, Republicans won those seats by 30 and 37 points. It appears that voters are angry at the Republican Party, she wrote. So that was a pretty big deal, both of those special elections in Florida and the huge gains that Democrats made in both those seats. But the biggest one was in Wisconsin. The state Supreme Court race showed a similar dynamic, she writes. The candidate endorsed by President Trump and backed by more than $20 million from Elon Musk lost the race to his opponent, Circuit Court Judge Susan Crawford. Musk had campaigned in a state for Crawford's opponent, handing out 2 $1 million checks and saying that the election could determine, quote, the future of America and Western civilization. Well, guess what? Susan Crawford won by about 10 points and said in her victory speech, as a little girl growing up in Chippewa Falls, I never could have imagined that I'd be taking on the richest man in the world for justice in Wisconsin. And we won. So that was a huge story yesterday. And of course, the big story was the big man, Senator Cory Booker. I opened the show with him, and yesterday he did it. More than 25 hours he held the floor of the Senate, not reading from the phone book or children's literature, as some of his predecessors have done, but delivering a coherent, powerful speech about the meaning of America and the ways in which the Trump regime is destroying our democracy. Standing for 25 hours and 5 minutes without a break to use the restroom and pausing only when colleagues asked questions to enable him to rest his voice, Senator Booker called out the Trump administration's violations of the Constitution, detailed the ways in which the administration is hurting American farmers, and so much more. According to Washington Post, before he was through, Booker's speech had been liked on TikTok 400 million times. People were watching it, they were crying, they were moved, they were motivated, and this is what we expect of our leaders. We talked about it a lot at last night's Hangout, and you can hear more of those reactions and our talk all about it at the link from last night's Hangout. You can rewatch it. If you're a stand-up subscriber, you should get it. Senator Cory Booker broke the record for longest Senate speech, beating racist Strom Thurmond's 1957 speech, 24 hours, 18 minutes. He said, "I'm not here because of Strom Thurmond's speech. I'm here despite his speech." All right, well, other things did happen yesterday. Here are some more headlines. Yesterday, the Trump administration laid off 10,000 federal health workers across the CDC, FDA, NIH, and all other health agencies, and it was a completely disorganizing, legally questionable effort by conspiracy theorists and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to downsize the Department of Health and Human Services, and the consequences are going to probably be seen for years to come. I can't imagine the reverberation. I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope we're all wrong about that, but it looks very, very bad as a result. That could do a whole story, and I will talk more about it with Aaron Carroll. I did at Podjam last week, as well as last week on the show. 23 states and Washington, D.C. sued the Trump administration yesterday over its decision to rescind $11 billion in federal public health funding. I think one of the biggest stories over the past week, and I have not been following the news closely because I'm not producing this news segment, but Trump administration admitted that immigration officials mistakenly deported a legally protected Maryland resident to a prison in El Salvador, and there's nothing they apparently can do about it. Obviously, there's a lot to discuss about that, and we will in the days and weeks to come for sure. I don't think anybody's going to take their eyes or ears off of that specific person. Or put simply, in Monday's court filing, attorneys for the government admitted that the Salvadoran man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, had been deported accidentally. Let's not forget him or his name. And a few more stories I want to share with you. The body of the 4th U.S. Army soldier who went missing in Lithuania during a training exercise last week was found Tuesday afternoon, military officials said. The soldier, whose name was not released pending family notification, was the last to be found after the bodies of 3 other soldiers were found Monday. Sounds like a terrible story, a terrible accident, and I'm not sure why it's not a bigger story, I guess, at this point. The death toll from a 7.7 magnitude earthquake in Myanmar climbed to more than 2,700 yesterday as the scale of destruction in the isolated, war-torn Southeast Asian nation became clear. Absolutely horrific news coming out of Myanmar. On Capitol Hill yesterday, Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego announced that he will block the confirmation of top leaders at the Department of Veterans Affairs, raising the stakes in Democrats' bid to get the Trump administration to back off plans to cut jobs from the sprawling agency that serves millions of military veterans. Former Senator Kyrsten Sinema, the centrist dealmaker who wielded virtually unilateral veto power over the Biden administration's legislative agenda, has landed on K Street as a lobbyist. That's right. What a shock. The Arizona Democrat turned independent is joining a law firm, a prestigious law firm, where she will serve as a senior advisor in global regulatory and intellectual property practice. Oh, so gross and terrible as she is and all that she did in the U.S. Senate. Wanted to make sure everybody knew about that one as well. Also, yesterday we learned that the White House had settled on a tariff plan, but that it would not reveal details. So we'll see what happens with the fascist leader's stupid economic tariff plan. I think it was supposed to be Liberation Day. Was that today? I don't think it happened. A law firm that employs Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, has learned that it is among the next firms that Trump plans to punish. Will they bend the knee? I think so. Also yesterday, the United States announced huge news that will probably go undercover, that we will end programs that provided nearly 50 million women, many in the world's poorest countries, with contraception. The reverberations for that are going to be seen forever, I suppose. Also, Speaker Mike Johnson failed to block a bipartisan effort to allow members of Congress to vote by proxy after the birth of a child. So if they can vote in absence if they want to stay home with their kid. And Mike Johnson and other Republicans didn't like that, and they lost because a lot of Republicans voted for it as well. Makes sense to me. Also, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, which is a weird series of words to say, ordered diplomats to scrutinize the social media of student visa applicants for criticism of the U.S. and Israel. So now there's a litmus test, and they're going to go through your social media if you're applying for a visa, which is a pretty terrible idea for all kinds of reasons. Prosecutors announced that they would be pursuing the death penalty for Luigi Mangione, of course, for murdering insurance executive Brian Thompson in front of a hotel in Midtown Manhattan last December. Mangione is 26 years old. He's pled not guilty. A week after 15 rescue workers died during an evacuation mission in Gaza, the UN said that Israel had killed them and dumped most of the bodies in a mass grave. It was a rare accusation from the organization, the UN, which typically is cautious about assigning blame, but a huge and horrific story there. In France, they began debate on a bill in Parliament that would require consent to be given before sex. Not sure exactly how that would work or be regulated, but it's interesting to see. A volcano in the country of Iceland erupted yesterday, endangering the town of Grindavik. Just wanted to say the name of that town, and I still messed it up. And in Russia, the government has unleashed a wave of repression against LGBTQ people, which is a big story. I read this one. Homosexuality was decriminalized in Russia in 1993, and then in 2023, the Russian Supreme Court designated the international LGBTQ movement as an extremist organization on par with the likes of Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. Under laws targeting extremist groups, gay rights activists, their lawyers, or others involved in efforts to support LGBTQ people could face jail sentences of 6 to 10 years, and they are cracking down, and it is horrific. Another reason to hate Vladimir Putin. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the headlines that I have collected for you today. Let me know what you're hearing, what you're seeing. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com anytime throughout the day, and I'll do my best to get those headlines on for you. But now it's time to get to the clips, the clip show, the audio that I've grabbed for you today. Got a bunch of good stuff. Let's get to it. Got to start, of course, with Senator Cory Booker, an excerpt from his 25-hour speech yesterday.
Hineni, behold, Lord, here I am. And so I confess that I have been imperfect. I confess that I've been inadequate to the moment. I confess that the Democratic Party has made terrible mistakes, that have given lane to this demagogue. I confess we all must look in the mirror and say we will do better. And it's not just defining ourselves what we're against. We, the next generation, as the baby boomers are leaving the stage, the last baby boomer president, we have to say that we're going to redeem the dream. We're going to dream America anew. We're going to start talking about bold things that don't divide people, that unite people. Bold things that excite the moral imagination of a country to do better, to go higher, that call us together. This is the time where new leaders in our country must emerge. I'm not talking about senators. I'm talking about citizens. And now it's our generation. We have to redeem the dream. We have to excite people again. He, in the highest office of our land, wants to divide us against ourselves, wants to make us afraid, wants to make us fear so much that we're willing to violate people's fundamental rights. We're willing to go after the speech on college campuses. We're willing to go after law firms, go after the freedom of the press. Don't let him do that. Don't become like him. Be an American that says, I look to the future and I'm excited. Yes, things are tough right now. They're hard, they're scary, they're hurting, but we can overcome this. Our American history, if it's nothing else, American history, if it's nothing else, it is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of impossible things against impossible odds. We are a nation that is great, not because of the people that are trying to whitewash our history, to remove great people, Native Americans, black people, and women from our military websites. I don't want a Disneyfication of our history. I don't want to whitewash history. I don't want to homogenize history. Tell me the wretched truth about America, because that speaks to our greatness. And so what do I want to people to do? It starts with us, man. And you're doing it. I've seen courage of my colleagues. We're doing it, but we have to do more. And I'm sorry. I'm not going to be a politician that's going to say, we are going to do more for you. I'm going to be a politician. I'm going to be a leader that demands more from America.
Will the senator yield for one last question?
I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
All right. There you go. I think Adam Schiff was the one who asked the question right there. Pretty powerful, got to say. And we'll hear more in a minute. Here's another senator yesterday. This is Jack Reed and his weird monotone voice. He was questioning President Trump's replacement for the Joint Chief of Staff, whose name was C.Q. Brown, the eminently qualified former Joint Chief of Staff who Trump and Pete Hegseth fired because, well, he's a black guy. So his nominee is a guy named John Kane, who's not even qualified. He wasn't even a 4-star general, which you have to be for this position. And Senator Jack Reed sought out to find out whether or not Trump was lying about something. Here's that.
Following the announcement of your nomination, press stories started to circulate about comments President Trump made about you in your past relationship. And according to the reports, the president tells a story where he spoke to you while you were serving in Iraq on active duty, and you said that you loved him, and I'll kill for you, sir. The president then said that you followed up these comments by putting on a Make America Great Again hat. General Kane, is any of this story true?
Senator, as I mentioned to the chairman, for 34 years I've upheld my oath of office and the responsibilities of my commission. I think I went back and listened to those tapes, and I think the president was actually talking about somebody else, and I've never worn any political merchandise or said anything to that effect.
All right, there you go. There's the truth, at least his truth, and I think the real truth is that Trump just made it up. He wasn't thinking about somebody else. He made it up. He was lying because it's anybody in the military knows not to put that hat on or any other political hat on. But maybe he did, but I'm pretty sure we all know that Trump was lying. And speaking of liars, here's Lauren Boebert. Yesterday, a House task force on the declassification of federal secrets hearing, which was the least important thing to be doing, took a look at the new files that came out, the JFK assassination, and they wasted our time and brought people like Oliver Stone up to question him. And Lauren Boebert didn't know that he wasn't Roger Stone. And this clip went viral yesterday because she's such an idiot. And I thought about maybe I shouldn't play this, but, well, here it is, about a minute.
Mr. Stone, you wrote a book accusing LBJ of being involved in the killing of President Kennedy. Did these most recent releases confirm or negate your initial charge? Being involved in the assassination of President Kennedy.
No, I didn't. If you
Yes,
look
sir.
closely at the film, there's no. It accuses the President Johnson of being part of a complicit in a cover-up of the case, but not in the assassination itself, which I don't know.
What do you think that he was complicit with? Yes, sir. I'll get to you.
The cover-up. Well, how about, for starters, appointing Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, who was fired by Kennedy, to the commission itself, to the Warren Commission. And he goes to almost every meeting, and he's pretty much in charge of the Warren Commission from the beginning. Alan Dulles. That's part of the evidence that points to President Johnson's either incompetence or involvement.
Mr. Morley, I think you had something to add on that.
I think you're confusing Mr. Oliver Stone with Mr. Roger Stone.
I haven't stated it yet.
Who?
Sorry.
It's Roger Stone who implicated LBJ in the assassination of the president. It's not my friend
Is that what
Oliver
all the whispers
Stone.
were there? I may have misinterpreted that, and I apologize for that.
What an idiot and an embarrassment, but I thought I'd still share that with you from yesterday. Also, yesterday, Elon Musk finally sat down with media, but unfortunately it was Fox News' The Five, but at least liberal Jessica Tarlov, who's real smart, was there. She asked Elon Musk the most important question about conflict of interest. He didn't answer it. Or he said everything is transparent. My crimes I'm committing are transparent, so you can see them. And to some extent, that's true, but he never answered the question about the conflict of interest. Here it is.
I wanted to talk to you about what Doge has been doing. So you've been making cuts to a lot of the agencies that have open investigations and regulatory battles with your companies. At the same time, you continue to get billions in government contracts. Tesla gets billions in subsidies. How do you explain that to the American people?
Well, everything that Doge does is an open book. So I think the most transparent the most transparent organization in government ever. Every single Doge action is listed on the Doge.gov website. It's also listed on the X handle. So if anyone has a concern about any one of those actions, they can bring that up. They can raise that. And I do want to say, like, sometimes we make a mistake. Nobody bats 1,000. We will at times make a mistake, we'll act very quickly to correct it. I am under such an extreme spotlight, so much scrutiny, that it's literally impossible for me to get away with anything nefarious. And obviously, nor do I wish to. So this is a case where we have radical transparency. We're actually willing to admit that we do make mistakes. Often people are not willing to admit they make mistakes, but we are. But we want to emphasize we fix them quickly, and we're trying to do the right thing for the American taxpayer, for the American people. And I think history will be the judge that what we've done here and what we're doing is a very good thing for the strength and future of America.
There you go. He didn't answer the question, and that's really the answer. We talked about that at the Hangout last night, by the way. All right, now let's get to Fox News, back to Fox News, where our old friend Will Cain embarrassed himself on television by trying to question a Democrat named Glenn Ivey of Maryland. I thought this was pretty good. Here's Glenn Ivey dunking on Will Cain.
To be dispassionate. I want to see the same passion from you on those issues of the crimes of illegal immigrants as you do for this error when it comes to illegal immigrants. That's what I hope for you, Congressman.
I prosecuted the crimes of illegal immigrants for 8 years. I locked up more people in my day than you ever did. So don't lecture me about not being passionate about prosecuting illegal immigrants to do something wrong.
No.
I've done it. You haven't. Back up.
Today, Congressman, you write the laws. Congressman, today, you don't prosecute the laws, you write the laws.
County. In fact, I did a joint prosecution with Rod Rosenstein of MS-13 when he was the U.S. attorney and I was the state's attorney. I've done this before. You have not. Don't sit there and lecture me about being passionate about people who break the law. I've done it. You have not.
Congressman, I think you took that a little more personally than intended, but I think that what I'm talking about is not your past, but your present, where we apply passions today in our current jobs, not our former jobs. Congressman, I have to leave it here. I've gone way over time, and I'm always willing to do so. I appreciate the back and forth. You're welcome here anytime.
All right. Well, I wonder if he'll come back. Okay, there you go. There's that. And now back to the Senate floor from yesterday. Here is more passionate speech, more from Cory Booker's passionate speech.
There's a room here in the Senate named after Strom Thurmond. To hate him is wrong. And maybe my ego got too caught up that if I stood here, maybe I could break this record of the man who tried to stop the rights upon which I stand. I'm not here, though, because of his speech. I'm here despite his speech. I'm here because as powerful as he was, the people were more powerful. But I remind you, all those people who believe like me that we've got to redeem the dream, turn again to John Lewis, because you all know the story, my colleagues, of when the man that beat him savagely, drew blood, cracked bones. Decades later, he was a congressman. That man brought his grandson with him to ask for forgiveness from John Lewis. I heard about this story when I was in the car in Georgia with him. What did you do, John? This man that so viciously beat you, wounded you, bruised you, battered you. What did you do when he came to ask you for forgiveness? What did you do? And a good Christian man of faith, simply said, every one of us needs mercy. Every one of us needs redemption. I forgave him. I hugged him. We wept. And I looked at the boy. This nation needs you too.
So good. So good, Cory Booker, yesterday. He really did a fantastic job, according to most folks that I've read and heard. All right. Well, finally, I've got for you Elie Mystal on MSNBC. Yeah, I think this was yesterday. I'm not sure if yesterday or the day before, but he's always spitting truths, and this is no exception.
Yeah, this is what fascism looks like. I don't know what y'all expected it to look like. I don't know if you thought that one day would be a headline in the New York Times, fascism here today. This is what it looks like. And when you say detained, I'm actually going to push back a little bit. That is a nice way of putting it. These people are being abducted and, yes, disappeared from our streets under executive fascism authority, right? And so when you say the Democrats, all of whom voted to confirm that little Marco Rubio, they're demanding questions. Maybe they should have asked him some questions before they voted to confirm him, would be my question for the Democrats. In terms of the legal structure here, I think it is important for people to understand that there is none. We're going to talk about the Alien Enemies Act, and we're going to talk about the trumped-up legal authority Rubio and Trump to be claimed to be using. But ultimately, we are beyond a point of basic due process. As you pointed out, Simone, these people haven't even been charged in court. The government has brought no evidence to suggest what their illegal activities may have been. Ozturk, the student, as far as we know, all she did was write an article in a student newspaper, and she was abducted off the street. This is what fascism looks like. And so I hope people look at it, and I hope the people who voted for Trump look at it and understand that this is what they've done to this country.
Yeah. As always, spitting truths, Elie Mystal on MSNBC, and let's end the news segment on a laugh, as I try to do every day. It's Stephen Colbert at The Late Show, hosting last night on CBS. Here's what he had to joke about.
I don't know about you, but I am feeling good about America. April Fools. Speaking of fools, Donald Trump. Tomorrow, Trump will officially announce his price-raising, economy-breaking tariffs on what he's calling
Liberation Day.
Yes. Liberation Day. I'm reminded of the immortal words of Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or charge me an extra $10,000 for a Hyundai Elantra. Yes. Still gets you. Right up here. Right up here. Like everything, he's got to make it a spectacle. So he's unveiling the tariffs in a major Rose Garden event. Because when you elect a reality TV star, you get all your economic policy via rose ceremony. Germany, I enjoyed our time in the fantasy suite, but your home visit left me cold. 30% tariffs across the board. Pack your lederhosen, Fraulein. There's even Das ist schlecht. Schokoladenhassenpfeffer. Here's how it's going to work. Here's how it works. Experts are warning that if permanent tariffs do take effect and other countries retaliate, the economy would almost immediately tumble into a recession that would last for more than a year. So, if you have a retirement account, no, you don't. Republicans are already scrambling to pre-contain the damage, and they've settled on this fun new metaphor.
There's absolutely going to be short-term pain. I mean, if you're going to remodel your house to make it better in the end, it's going to be really annoying in the short term when your house is getting remodeled.
I feel like in some ways in the economy, this is kind of like a kitchen remodel or a bath remodel. There's a bit of a mess at the beginning, but everybody has a long-term look of where we're headed.
Way to connect to people suffering economic hardship, Republicans. You know that thing where you not only own a home but have the money to remodel it? Okay, you seem angry. Let me try another analogy. Let's say that one of your boats needs a paint job. So that doesn't resonate? Okay, imagine you're hungry for dinner now, but your private chef says it won't be ready for 20 minutes. Why isn't this working?
All right, there you go, Colbert. Hopefully you had some giggles there. And now it's time to get to my conversation with our headline guest today. It's Tim Wise, live from Podjam last week. We sat down in front of a live audience of stand-up subscribers and listeners who joined us for Podjam, and it was a hit. Hopefully it sounds okay technically. If there's any issues here, let me know, and I'll try to correct them for future listeners. I know we didn't have our audience mic'd, so that was my bad, but the conversation, I think, was great. I hope you appreciate it as much as those who are in attendance did. Let's do it right now. Support Tim in all the ways that you can. Links to all of his work in today's show notes. Here we go. Give it up for Tim Wise. Give it up for Tim Wise. Give me a full clap, please. Thank you.
That was very impressive. You're not, because you're eating.
Karen was given a half clap because she had a Canadian butter tart.
I know.
She's giving you full respect. Half clap.
I understand. Very good.
You know what? Why don't you just interview Tim? I don't want to.
It's okay. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, do I? I do. Well, but we're really happy to have you here. Real quick, we were just talking. This is, no offense, Cassie and Sheila, who might be here or not. This is not our favorite town in America. You travel all over speaking. What is your experience in Las Vegas? Have you ever lost anything here?
No, because I don't really gamble. I mean, it's funny. I used to gamble back in the day when
the recording, keep it real close.
When the slot machines would spit out real quarters, I had a system. Like, for real, I had a system. You couldn't lose if you just didn't reinvest your money. You took the new quarters, you put them in different cups, but now they got smart, and now it's all credit and script, and they give you the paper, and you lose the credits because if you win something, it just brings up your credit. You're going to spend it down. So I know better now. And I know. And my grandfather used to play craps, but he didn't teach me how to do it.
So you don't gamble?
I don't gamble. No, I've only been here 5 times.
Oh,
and I don't like heat. This weather is nice. This I can handle. I lived in New Orleans for 10 years, so I don't do this shit anymore. The 100-degree shit. And I don't give a shit that it's dry. I don't care. 120. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, no. They try to tell you, these people. No. These dry heat people. They try to. I figured out what they're doing. It was Joe. It's something. The differentiation between dry heat and I guess humid heat, and these dry heat people try to act like it's so much better, and I'm like, nah, it's fucking hot, and I don't like it.
100 is 100. 110 is 100. So but when I heard that it was going to be between 59 and 75, I was like, okay, well, we brought San Diego to Vegas for the week. That's better.
There you go.
I can live in that. So that's. I mean, I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah.
I am like you. It is not my favorite place, but it is better than Reno. So,
no offense if there's any Reno people here.
I mean, I'm just saying, last time I was in Reno, I watched 3 elderly people spend what I knew was their last dollar in a horrible casino. And I just wanted to stop them, but I thought that was paternalistic. So I let them go ahead and spend their last dollar. But it was very sad. And I just remember sitting there and they were crying. I was crying. I never wanted to go back.
Yeah, well, what's weird
really
is
cry. You believed that. You said, oh.
I saw that an hour ago in this casino, and Nick, I'm so sorry. I hope we'll make you whole again, buddy. That's all he has left is that T-shirt. He's like Reacher, drink. Are you watching? That's my most important question. Are you watching Reacher on Amazon Prime?
No.
Oh, all right. No. Well, we'll move on. And
okay.
You hate America, but but we knew that already. So let's get to it. Lots to talk about with you. Let's just start with this week in America. I do just want to get your
good one, wasn't it? They're all so good.
Every week is so great.
If we just knock off a couple of days from each week and just have 5-day fucking weeks right now, because the 7 days are just too much for this news cycle.
It does seem like on the weekend the chaos stops for a minute. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But it seems like you look away for a minute and maybe you make it up. But I can always talk. Obviously, we can talk about all the issues that you're an expert on. But I can talk with you about anything and all politics. But I just got to get your take because I haven't talked to you about. You've seen it all. What happened this week when we learned that the highest level intelligence personnel, chiefs in our entire country sent Jeff Goldberg, all of it, a journalist. They accidentally added Jeff Goldberg to a text. Everybody knows about the story. What does that say to you about this administration or where we're at as a country right now? Because I don't think we've ever seen anything like that kind of intelligence leak or failure.
No, because in the past we had competent people running these things, and then we got the poster boy for white male mediocrity to be the head of the Department of Defense. So we have a guy who, he's tatted up like a Ouija board, and he, and thinks that, I suppose, bringing his wife to classified meetings now we're
brought his wife to classified.
Brought his wife to classified, which I'm sure, if Lloyd Austin had done that, the former Secretary of Defense, black man, had brought his wife of 40 years, by the way, not his third wife in 20. His one wife in 40 had brought her to any of those. I'm sure that would have gone over fine with the MAGA crowd. I'm sure they would have been absolutely fine with the presumed DEI hire that they think he was, bringing his wife. But Pete Hegseth, who, as we were joking, is the DUI hire, could do it, and that was considered fine. What I really liked about the signal messages, though, the best part of it was he had this this guy who poses as this badass alpha. He was in the military, right? He did a couple tours or whatever. And he's sending like heart emojis or whatever on the, see this? He sent emojis. Like what grown ass man?
Oh yeah, he responded on a signal chat about killing Houthis with emojis. Which is that's perfectly representative of where we're at, I think.
Well, it is, but I'm just saying it just is hilarious for somebody who poses as such a badass to do that. So again, you know, they're not what they seem, or maybe they are exactly what they seem. But I think it's indicative of a lot of things, and it's not just that the response would have been different had this been a Democrat. And what the MAGA crowd would have said. It is precisely that the ability of white men, and I say this having been white all of my life, as you have been, to be utterly mediocre, on a good day mediocre, maybe considerably below that, is just unparalleled in ways that people of color are not allowed. I mean, this is a guy, Pete Hegseth, who said about C.Q. Brown, the former head of the Joint Chiefs, who was relieved of his duty, said, well, was he hired just because he was black? We'll never know. No, we do fucking know. This guy's actually got a record of service that tells us that we know that he was qualified for that position, unlike Pete Hegseth, who was a Fox News host. Like that. Yep. But this speaks to the way in which people in this orbit, in the MAGA orbit, and on the right generally, and too many white folks who aren't even in the MAGA orbit, frankly, think about black people in positions of authority. If there are any black people in positions of authority, it is presumptive for them that they are not qualified. And whereas when white men are in positions of authority, and you suggest that they're not qualified, people look at you like you've lost your mind. So that's where we are. And I hope people are starting to see that, but, never put it past them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in my life, in my career, and the places I've been, like I often find myself with certain like white executives going, where does your talent lie? Like, how did you get here? And then you find out it's some kind of nepotism or legacy hire or whatever. Yesterday, we talked about with the three of these ladies and Kimberly in the back, we do a regular show and they join me. She's back there. Say hi. And we did a whole taping yesterday and we talked about this and I want to just bring it back up because you just mentioned the whole DEI thing. And white men failing forward and all of that. Pete Hegseth, this guy Waltz, who's the NSA director, and I said, talk about a DEI hire. Would you mind, Francis, explaining what you said to me, to Tim? Yeah, when you said we can't use it that way. Unfortunately, I did not have the audience mic'd, and so you can't hear what Francis said right here, but I try to recap it, and then Tim responds. Yeah, they've taken the language, and then I started to use it in the way that they're using it about them.
Yeah, and we really shouldn't. No, I think it's really, that's why I wanted to call Hegseth the DUI hire rather than DEI, because DEI, again, like the thing about it, if you're going to demonize, you're going to say, well, that's white affirmative action, then you're demonizing what affirmative action is, right? Which is really an opportunity to create equal opportunity. So we should be reclaiming the language of equal opportunity in these conversations. And we should be saying, and by the way, I think people of color who have been recruited, for instance, because of DEI or affirmative action programs shouldn't feel any shame in that at all. We're talking about people who are incredibly qualified but would have been overlooked but for those policies and programs. So I don't see why anybody should shrink from that. I don't see why anybody should say, oh, I'm not a DEI hire. I was hired on my merits. Both can be true. In fact, both are true. There's no institution in this country that no corporation, no college, no organization that says, let's just go find a black person. Just go find a Latino. Just grab the first Asian off the street. Find the first woman that you can and bring her in and give her the job. Nobody does that. It has always been about merit. And so we shouldn't be ashamed of it. And, I joked the other day, I've been doing this long-term contract with Cal Poly Pomona out in California. And this is we're doing like 4 events. And they have this thing called the Black Thriving Initiative. And I'm working with them on that and helping them on. And the reason I got that contract, I was the DEI hire because they understood the value of having a white guy come in and help them with this program, sell this program, keep it, it was already in existence, but to help really sort of create the narrative around it that would bring in more white folks into supporting it. They understand. And I'm not ashamed of that either, because if I can help them move their shit forward because I'm a white man and I can speak to other white people because I'm, like the white person whisperer or whatever for them, then I'll do that. And there's no shame in that because you know what? In that moment, my whiteness actually became a form of merit. Right. It wasn't, in other words, something that was just being handed to me, but it was something like, you know what? We got these people. They could all do a great job. Let's get that guy because we think he'll be able to reach some people that others won't reach. Now, I hate that that's the case, right? I think white folks need to learn to listen to whatever it is I'm going to say from black folks and from other folks of color. Having said that, if I can help move a mission forward, then hiring me to help move the mission forward is no different than saying, you know what, we can move this other mission forward better if we get some black folks in the room, and if we get some brown folk in the room, and if we get women of all colors in the room. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I think that's where our conversation with DEI and affirmative action and all of it has just gone off the rails, is we cannot hold in tension two possibilities. One, that merit is an important indicator, and two, that DEI helps unlock merit. Like, that's not that difficult, but apparently it has been.
We see every day news stories that are either from the federal government trying to erase history, or from school districts like in Idaho with my friend Mandy here. And she works in a school in Idaho, predominantly white, as you can imagine, because it's Idaho. One of the teachers had a poster up, and this has made national news now. Have you heard about the story? Yeah. And it says, "Everyone is welcome." Yeah. And the hands are all up, and they're every shade. Right. And the administrator's like, some people that's going to make some people uncomfortable, even though I don't even think they had any complaints, right? This has gone national now. Like, I feel like that's one of the most egregious examples. And I also feel like it's, and I'm very, as you know, involved in my kid's school district fighting these assholes for the last 3 years. And you see that creep. And now it's not so much a creep. You have better words for it, but they're very outspoken about it. But like, to me, that example was so egregious, especially because of the atmosphere there and the culture there, and the fact that that's probably the place that needs it in a lot of ways the most. But talk a little bit about what you're seeing taking place we can talk about it from the federal government. We can talk about it from major corporations, law firms we talked about, or local schools, in schools where kids are supposed to be learning about why people should turn their phones off and not have an old school and not have an old school
that
ring.
Wasn't me, but I don't want it to be.
It's almost like if that's the ringtone, it's almost as like they're doing it on purpose. Because why?
Well, but at least it's not. I'm always on the plane.
He ran out with a corded phone. It's that was a rotary dial. Who was that? Why did they have a monocle?
I prefer that ringtone to the one. I always am in the airplane with the asshole that's got bad to the bone. Right?
Oh yeah, that also is a real tell.
And they let it play for like 6 rings because they're like, we just want to let you know how utterly uncool we are.
Well, and you look at him, he's never bad to the bone, is he?
He's not. No, he's not at all. Not at all bad to the bone. Very proud of himself.
So before that horrific, rude interruption, as I was really crescendoing and being too verbose to get to Mary, I'm hoping. Thank you, Mary Beth.
Meanwhile, we got like 5 guys in here that are changing their fucking ringtones right now. They're just like, oh shit. Make sure I'm on airplane mode. Gotta download something new.
To see what's happening in schools, to me, and the line there, holding the line is educators, and they're terrified because they want to keep their jobs and they don't want to be part of the, you can understand that. And some parents, like 4 parents, it's like me and 3 other people in my district, and everybody else is terrified.
And what's funny is they're terrified of a ridiculously small number of people who make all this noise. So if you look at the book challenges, for instance, that were taking place even before the election of Donald Trump this time, you look at the state-by-state book challenges, particularly in the South where I'm from, and an overwhelming percentage, I can't remember, 70, 80% that were complaints filed by 11 people. And these 11 people didn't even live in the districts where they were complaining. They didn't have children in the districts where they were complaining. One of the women in Texas who actually went and testified said something about, she's a homeschooler, but she was wanting to dictate the curriculum in the public schools that she ain't going to send her children to in any event.
That's nice.
And and so you've got that. What we've got is we've got hundreds of books in a couple of counties right outside of Nashville where I live. There's one county that's banned 500 books, one county that's banned 400 books. I'm very offended that I've only had one book banned.
You should try harder, yeah.
I need to try a lot harder because I feel like it's a sign of having arrived when you do get your shit banned. I only had one book banned. Very upset about that. And it was only in one district in Pennsylvania. So Dear White America, it got banned by this one district. And I'm like, the only reason white like me hasn't been banned is because I think they look at it and they're like, oh, good, it's one for us.
Which is why you titled it that way, and they pick it up like, wait a second.
Like, oh, thank God. My story will be told.
He knows my struggle.
Right. So maybe I just need to have more obvious titles like "fuck you, racist," and then they'll.
Well, that's on page 2, I think.
Well, it's page 1, but it's But no, so what we've seen the book bans, but what we're also seeing is, like in the immediate aftermath of the executive orders that Trump issued, you had museums covering up installations of people of color or women, pictures of people of color and women at the NSA. I think it's the Cryptographic Museum, which I'm sure is on your list when you go to D.C. You're going to go to the Cryptographic Museum. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it's where you go and learn about cryptography and I guess like code breaking and things like that. I guess that's what that is, right? I don't know. It's controlled by the National Security Agency. And they've got a museum. It's just an internal museum. It's just for their own people. It's not like tourists actually go to this thing. But even then, they went and they covered up a couple of the installations because they featured women and or folks of color. It's like, we can't show that, right? Now you've got the new executive order, which says, that they're going to go in and essentially take out divisive ideology from the museums and put the Confederate statues back up, right? Because apparently having anything in a museum that tells the truth about racism in American history is divisive ideology. Putting statues up to racist traitors who waged war in the United States is not divisive, apparently. We're being hacked by Robert E. Lee.
That is a.
That's
I just heard what you said.
We're being Zoom bombed by the ghost of the Confederacy. Yeah,
it's a Zoom thing, I think.
It is.
So go ahead.
So I know. Well, one thing I do know, although most of my books have not been banned, I will soon, I'm sure, be removed from the African American History and Culture Museum, which I am in, which I know is weird. It's very strange. Again, DEI. And I'm in the video at the very end. There's a video as you leave the museum, and Lonnie Bunch, who's the curator of the Smithsonian, and he actually created that museum and got it off the ground, brought me in and several other people to do these little bits. And they had me talking about the myth of colorblindness. And I think the interviewer, may have been Lonnie, said, well, what is colorblind? And I said, it's just some bullshit that white people came up with to make ourselves feel better. And they actually, I don't think I said bullshit in the museum because there will be children, but it was something along those lines. I'm quite confident that will not be on the tape much longer, nor will there be probably any of the other installations. I mean, if you've been to the museum, which is a fabulous, fabulous museum, Emmett Till's casket is in the museum. I'm sure they're going to take that out of deference to his murderers, because we wouldn't want, the descendants of those folks to feel bad, I guess, about their history. There's a statue of Thomas Jefferson that is flanked by a brick wall made of bricks with the names of his human property on the bricks. I'm sure they're going to take that off. They're probably going to take off there's an auction block from which black bodies were sold. That will probably be removed so that we can make way for a statue to Clarence Thomas or whatever the hell they think is important. So history is being assaulted. Truth is being essentially removed from places where it's supposed to thrive. Museums being one, textbooks being another, classroom curricula being another, and all of this in the name of this sort of phony colorblind patriotism, which does not take account of the history of this country at all, without which you can't understand this country if you don't understand how it's steeped in the history of racism.
Perfectly said. And I wonder, the only thing that gives me any solace at all is knowing that you're out there doing the work that you're doing in the way that you've always been doing it. And so my question is, are you worried about, like, if we lose your voice, if you are...
Do you know something I don't know?
Bring him in.
Am I giving off terminal illness vibes or something like it?
Why is Stephen Miller here with a black hood?
Oh, Nosferatu came. That's good.
Oh, no, that's Michael Klasky. Sorry.
No, it can't. Stephen Miller can't be here. The sun is still up. He doesn't come out. He won't come out until night.
No, are you worried? Are you censoring yourself in any way? Have you received any kind of threats?
No, I'm not. Threats? Yeah. Look,
you've always received threats, but
I think we talk. I don't know. We talk about this. Right before Christmas, I got a call from the Office of Civil Rights in the Justice Department, And I'd been at my dad's. He's in a senior living facility, and I was leaving, and I get this call, and it says Office of Civil Rights, and I'm like, that's probably some loan officer. It's a scam, right? It's like somebody trying to get me to buy a house, and they just thought, let's put that on there. He'll buy it, So I answered the phone, and she said, it's so and so with OCR at the Department of Justice, and we wanted to talk to you as a crime victim about your case. And I was like, wait, what's going on? And then she started to tell me, and I remembered what it was. So we had talked about the fact that for a couple of years, I had FBI agents come to my house, not the house where I live now, but the house where I did at the time, and on 2 different occasions in 18 months to inform me of active threats on my life. And they couldn't give me a lot of details because the investigation was ongoing, but there was this organization or individual that was threatening to kill me, kill my family, and they thought that we should know. And I said, well, thanks. That's helpful. They said, we can't tell you anything. I said, okay. So I didn't forget about it. But when I moved from that house, I felt a little safer. I felt terrible for the people that bought the house from us. Didn't exactly tell them that, during the closing, like there are Nazis that might come. We had security people wanting us to build a safe room in the house, which you cannot resell a house with a safe room unless you have an explanation. And I didn't think I was going to have a good one. So I said, let's not do that. So I moved, and I'd gotten a call from the FBI once after I moved telling me again about another active threat. But what this call was them letting me know who it was that had threatened me. And it turned out that it was this group of people, 2 people, one male, one female, in the Terrorgram Collective, which Terrorgram being telegram and terror. They're very clever. Nazis, very, very clever. Very creative with the names. Terrorgram Collective, which had been arrested back in September, and they were indicted in September. And these 2 people, Matthew Allison and the woman's last name is Humber. I can't remember her first name. They had been in custody.
Was it Hummel? Was it?
It was. No, it's Humber.
Oh, okay. There he is. Right there.
It's Humber.
Yeah, no, it wasn't you? Okay.
But they had been in jail in awaiting trial since September, and I didn't know that's who had been threatening me. Well, these people actually are linked to several bombings, killings, attacks around the world. And they were actually designated by the Biden administration in the last 2 weeks before the transition as an international terrorist organization, which has never been done for a white supremacist group ever. Because in order to get an official State Department designation as a terrorist group, you have to have international connections. So they can't call the Klan that, even though the Klan is clearly a terrorist group. They can't call domestic skinheads or Nazis terrorists, even though they obviously are. But this was an international group with lots of people throughout Europe and throughout the world. And so I was very grateful for the heads up, especially because I knew that they were in prison. But what these folks had done is they had created kill cards for the people on their list. There were like 30 of us. The former mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, was on the list. A few judges were on the list. And we had kill cards with our names, our addresses, pictures of our homes. In some cases, pictures, not in my case, but in some cases, pictures of other family members were on the kill card. So I was very grateful, to learn that they had been captured. Now, of course, my fear at this point is in the hands of this Justice Department.
They now run the Justice Department.
Right. Like, I think they might have gotten a job. Right. Like Matthew Allison may be the undersecretary of something, within the week. Do I really think the prosecution is going to get dropped? Probably not. It would be a pretty bad look optically. They just had a bail hearing and denied Matthew Allison bail, which is certainly good. But then I have to tell you, not that there's anything funny about being marked for death. However, there was a Politico story I think it was Politico, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that I ran across where they talked about this guy. And it turns out that he is a Nazi. Yes. He is also, and he's from Idaho, by the way. He's also a gay DJ. Gay Nazi DJ. This is like, there's got to be a movie script somewhere. A gay Nazi DJ wants to kill you. And he's going to do that by playing like DOA records on just a constant loop. Yeah.
It's actually the name of my band.
Gay Nazi DJ.
Yeah, Gay Nazi DJ. Yeah. We're anti-fascist, ironically.
So it did sort of lighten the mood a little bit, and we all, people in my family, we have that kind of sick sense of humor. So when this stuff was going on, and even before that, we had been doxxed in 2018, and we were getting threats around the clock and threatening me, my wife, my kids, our dog, cats, whatever. They were going to come to the house. They leaked information about where the kids went to school and all that. And my oldest daughter at the time, and I know you and I talked about this, was applying for college. She has since graduated, but she was applying And her attitude of it was, well, at least I'm going to have, if the Klan comes and burns a cross on our lawn, I'm going to have a really good college essay. I will get in anywhere I want to go. And I was like, that, you got to look on the bright side.
I thought it was weird that it never happened. She ended up doing it herself because it was such a great idea.
Yeah.
She worked out like, what are you building?
No, she actually ended up writing her essay on the fact, on the white privilege embedded in our ability to go to authorities.
Oh, wow.
Because we did. We went to the FBI. I went to the local police who were of no use at all. The FBI tried. But if I'd been black getting that death threat, am I going to just roll up at the FBI office like, help me, Mr. FBI man? Right. No, hell no. I don't know too many black and brown folks who would have felt safe enough in their presence. And so there was a lot of white privilege in that. And I was pretty excited that she saw it. And wrote about it.
So I know this is a silly question, but why then keep doing the work that you do, given the nature of the threats and the paradigm that we now found ourselves in?
Well, look, first of all, I think what we're seeing in the last 2 months, and if we don't already know it, if we didn't already know it, we should. Anyone who thinks that playing nice with fascists will get fascists to leave you alone has never studied the history of fascism, right? When you play nice with them, they just want more. One thing we know about Donald Trump is that if somebody, and I'm a nonviolent person, I really am, and especially when I say anything now about violence and Trump, I get in a lot of trouble. But when he was 5 and the asshole that we all know he was when he was 5, somebody should have laid his ass out on the playground. That's all I'm saying. Somebody should have laid his ass out because it is his inability to ever having been stopped by anyone. He can be a bully. And, he's actually on the record saying, I'm pretty much the same person I was when I was 5. Yes, we know that is the problem. Like I was okay at 5, but if I hadn't been decidedly better by 55, somebody should kick my ass. And so I think what we're seeing now, Colombia capitulated, but they're still coming after. Now the new president has now been removed because she wasn't complying enough or they didn't trust her to comply enough. So now she's gone. Anyone who thinks any of these law firms that are capitulating to Trump.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, that are saying, we'll do $40 million worth of pro bono for whatever you care about, whatever causes you care, what causes does he care about? It's like they basically mean $40 million worth of free work for him the next time he gets indicted for something, I suppose. But you get these law firms to capitulate and they all think, if we just give in a little bit, the bully will leave us alone. That is not how bullies operate. And so for me, the idea that I could shut up or I could censor myself or I could dial back what it is that I say, it isn't going to protect me. It's not going to keep me safe. Do I worry about, there coming a point where we were joking about fleeing and going to Canada because there are Canadians in the room and I really would like asylum potentially. I'd like the option of asylum. But I'm not really serious about that until I am, right? Jason Stanley, who's a friend of mine, who's a professor at Yale. Yep. He's leaving. He's gone. Tim Snyder, professor at Yale, has also taken a job at the University of Toronto. Yeah. I think Tim is going to be coming back and forth, but Jason is gone. I think he's gone. And I can't say I blame him. Now, there is part of me that looks at the prospects of fleeing the country through the prism of privilege and says, I'm not doing that until they are literally coming for me. If I really thought people got to protect themselves, white, black, or otherwise. So if I thought I was literally on a list, not of some gay Nazi DJ, but I mean, not that that's not scary because they were linked to killing people in between raves, but if I thought that the government was going to, rendition me or whatever to some Salvadoran prison, like they've done with the folks, the 20 or 30 or 40 Venezuelans, the one with the autism speaks tattoo or whatever. None of these people, at least not that we know of, have any ties to any gang activity, violent activity, criminal activity at all. If I thought that was going to happen, would I potentially flee for my safety? Well, of course, I'm not a fool. But I think in the meantime, it's incumbent upon all of us to stay and to fight and to speak because they can't lock us all, and they can't kill us all. And unless we roll over, I mean, if you just study the history of fascism generally, and I know we're very fond of saying, these things can't happen here. These things, I don't know where anybody's been if they still say that. All the things that we thought wouldn't happen All the things that people swore aren't going to happen this time because he was already president once. He didn't do those things, did he? No, he didn't. No, he didn't do those things. So he's not going to do those things. We all know what he's going to do. He was president for 4 years. Okay, and here we are. We're 2 months in, and the wheels are coming off the bus. And so I think it is more than ever important for people to get off the sidelines and shout if they haven't been. If they have been, to shout louder and to make it clear that this is not the majority opinion in this country. This is not what the majority of Americans, I believe, want. And even in those places like Idaho, I've been to Idaho many times. Idaho's a lovely place with lovely people. And I've had incredible events in Idaho. I had a week of events in Wyoming, another very conservative state. Fantastic people. In Montana, I've been in every state in this country, and I don't believe for 1 second that there's any state that is fundamentally more racist in terms of its people than any other state. That shit is nationwide. It has always been nationwide. It looks different in Mississippi than it looks in New Jersey, than it looks in Idaho, than it looks in Maine, but it's all the same shit. So I want to remind people that the vast majority of is it Idahoans? Is that sounds Idahoan? Okay. People from Idaho. How about that? I'm just going to say that because I'm not clear.
All 10 of them.
The majority of people and I've had great events in Utah, and I've had great events in every single state. No matter how conservative, there are wonderful people who are fighting and resisting. And the thing that drives me nuts is so many people, and this is our people, these are progressive people, who will say, usually about my part of the country, about the South, just let them go. Let them secede again, forgetting for a minute that like 38 to 40% of all black folks in this country live in the South. So you're consigning black people to the Confederacy. That's not a gift, right? So when you have these usually northern liberals who are very smug about having won the war, and thank God they won the war, but I mean, come on, right? Like Malcolm X said anything below the Canadian border was the South. Right. Mel K said that Chicago was the most racist place that he'd ever tried to organize because they pelted him with rocks and bottles in Cicero, right outside of Chicago. And so this idea that you can say about this state or this group of people that they are beyond the pale and to hell with them, screw them. No, there are a lot of them. I was at an event a month ago in Wilson County, right outside of Nashville, where I live. So it's 40 minutes out. And I was asked, I got a call from Michael Eric Dyson in a hotel room 2 weeks earlier. And he's like, I need you to pinch hit for me. I said, Mike lives in Nashville. We've been friends a long time, teaches at Vanderbilt. And he apparently had a conflict. He was supposed to speak at this barbecue for the Democratic Party of Wilson County. And the Democratic Party of Wilson County used to be a juggernaut force because Tennessee was controlled by the Democratic Party. Now, it wasn't as progressive as I would have liked it to be. But it's a hell of a lot better than what we got now. And the Democrats were very strong there. They have not been strong for the last 20 or so years. But Mike was asked to come do this cookout thing. And I was like, all right. And I said, first of all, that's pretty amazing they invited you. He said, well, I can't make it. I need you to go. I'm like, do they even know who I am? Like, I don't know any of those people. They probably don't know me. They know him because he's a lot more famous. He's like, I'll call them. I promise they're going to love it. They were ecstatic. I went. We had like 300 people, right, at this event, black, white, everything in between, amazing people, older folks, younger folks, anywhere from probably mid-80s to like preteen. And there was so much energy in that room. That's in a state like Tennessee, which is as reactionary at the state legislative level as any state in this country. But those people are still there. And I think it's really important that we amplify their voices so that we remind people that just because you win the presidency with a plurality of the vote, 90 million people don't vote at all. You got 77 million votes. You didn't get the majority of people to vote for you. No president has ever been elected with the majority of the eligible electorate because most people just sort of check out, which means we know there are a lot of people out there that are not supportive of this bullshit that's being foisted upon them, whether that's from the State House in Tennessee or in schools in Idaho or at the presidential level. And so I think we have to be louder because if we silence our voice or in any way sort of turn the volume down, it allows the narrative to persist that this is what they voted for. This is what they want. That's why we're going to do it, because this is the popular will when it's not.
Very well said. I want to ask you about the role of media. And the way I want to ask this question is taking the full context of your career. Because, again, I became a person who hosted a show who brought on experts. So I went out to try to find people. And then I would get a reaction from folks listening as well as a reaction from bosses and, producers. And I always looked at mainstream or corporate media. So I worked at CNN and SiriusXM, so I'm certainly talking about them, but you could name plenty of other radio outlets or television outlets as being very, I wouldn't call it conservative, but they certainly were corporate capitalists, if you will. Yeah. And, you wouldn't hear certain things being said on those types of networks and programs. Right. And I remember working, I don't know how often you got invited on CNN. I know you'd been on most places, but once you go on there and say a thing, somebody goes, who the hell was that guy? An executive, forget about the viewers. Like that guy, when someone like you says the things that you say, white folks get really uncomfortable and outraged. And it means what I'm getting to is you might not get invited back. Right. My former producer didn't love having you on. Like he's too divisive. I'm like, everybody, I don't care what he thought. I was like, everybody needs to hear what he has to say and from him. Yeah. And so, we had Eric Siegel here yesterday, like platforming voices, bringing on people who are, in my opinion, kind of ahead of the curve, saying this is what's going to happen if we don't do this or we do that, or just speaking truth like you always have. It's not popular. Yeah. And it upsets a lot of people, and it certainly rocks the boat in corporate media. Tell me about where you started and where you are now with being invited on those types of outlets. We're always so happy you're here, and I'm always so frustrated that I don't have an even bigger audience to hear what you're having to say. And I'm always saying to people, as you know, you should have Tim Wise on so everybody can hear what he has to say. So take me through.
Well, I used to have a much bigger media profile than I do now. Back in the day, I was on when I say back in the day now, I mean like 2009, 2010, after the first Obama election, during the debates about ACA, during a lot of the Tea Party fuckery that was going on. Don Lemon used to have me on all the time.
But it was like only Don Lemon at CNN.
Well, okay, mostly. And there were a few others. There were a couple other shows that I did a handful of times. Don had me on about 30 times in about a year and a half, which is still not a ton. It's not like I was on a consultant contract. They never considered that, which mostly they only do for people that are local. I get at that time in particular in the pre-Zoom era, they weren't doing consultant contracts.
James Carville gets wherever he's at.
Yeah. That asshole will always be on. Yeah. Yes,
can we book
guy.
James Carville with the worst camera angle and have him say the same bullshit he always says and then keep bringing him back?
Yeah. And I just dislike him because he was an LSU grad and I went to Tulane. That's personal. But anyway, so that's not the only reason I dislike him, actually. There's a lot of reasons. But so Don had me on all the time and never got any real pushback for having me on. But then it just sort of dimmed after a while, diminished after a while. I think maybe I got a little overplayed for a minute on some of the race themes shows that he was doing. And, I was doing Melissa Harris Perry's show a lot on MSNBC. When she had a show, of course, they shit-canned her. I was on Joy Reid's show many times. They've shit-canned her. Any black woman on any of these networks is always knows, right, that they are walking a very thin line, not just in terms of what they say, but the guests that they bring on. And I was by no means the most radical or envelope pushing person on any of those shows. So I don't really know what the conversations were. I don't really know what happened. I still have a great relationship with Joy and her producers. So I know it wasn't that. I have a really great relationship with Don and his old producers, some of whom still work at CNN. So I don't really know, but I do know that, yes, I think what folks should understand about corporate media is it's not that they're either liberal or conservative. They are cautious. And the reason they are cautious, that's why Scott Jennings has to be on CNN, right? Even though he adds nothing to the conversation. He adds absolutely nothing to he doesn't even, there are smart conservatives in this country who could be on that program and you would know them as smart because they would not just regurgitate what the administration says. Just like those of us who consider ourselves smart progressives didn't regurgitate everything Barack Obama said. We took shots at Obama when we thought those were valid and legitimate. We certainly took shots at Bill Clinton. We certainly took shots at Biden. If you're an intelligent conservative, you ought to be on those programs. Scott Jennings is the opposite of that. right? Just like the guy, who was the guy, white hair, Jeffrey Lord used to.
Oh yeah, he lived with his mom. He's like 80.
He played. He played that role for a minute. He was the Scott Jennings of 2 cycles ago or whatever.
Yep.
And I don't know.
And he got canned.
He did.
Yep.
He did for some shit that he said that was, I think, really outrageous, as I recall. But what's fascinating is that these executives believe, not the Fox executives, not the Newsmax executives, not the America Now, whatever the network that is, whatever bullshit right-wing Fox knockoff. They don't worry about this. But CNN and MSNBC and NBC, the parent company, obviously are convinced that if they just have a few more conservatives on, they're going to get listeners who are going to come over. They're going to dump Steve Bannon and come watch us. Like this is, I don't know who's doing their marketing research to think that's going to work. It's like when Washington Post decides when Jeff Bezos decides we're just going to have editorials that are about the free market and liberty. Like, first of all, that's not true, because you're still going to flack for Trump, who doesn't believe in the free market. He believes in tariffs.
He doesn't.
So he certainly doesn't believe in liberty. Yeah. He's literally sending people out of the country without due process. So Jeff Bezos is full of shit on a million levels. But what's fascinating is the idea that you're going to have all of these people are going to be like, well, I was going to listen to Theo Vaughn, but now instead of that, or instead of the Joe Rogan experience, I'm going to go get the Washington Post, because Jeff Bezos is going to have an article about capital gains cuts. Like, what the fuck I don't know why they think that works. I don't know why they think, or maybe they're just showing their true colors, right? Which is that they personally are made uncomfortable by progressive politics. And I think that's probably more likely what it is.
I think that's true, but I also think it's like, what's mass appeal? What is going to get the most people? And I don't think it's working, clearly.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So Don Lemon, Joy Reid, and me, anybody else's careers you want to fucking destroy?
Well, let me just say, now you
where
joke.
Are you going next?
Let me tell
after
you
this?
how many. No, it gets deeper than this. So the very first national show that I ever did was a thing called Night Talk with Jane Whitney. You ever hear of that shit? No, you didn't. And you didn't. And you didn't hear about it. And it's because I think I killed her career. Yeah. I was on, and a handful of others. Her shtick was that she'd do like a Donahue type show, but she didn't wear shoes. That was her shtick. She would it was sort of gross. She would run up and down the aisles of the studio without shoes on. White women, they'll do shit like that. Yeah. And
didn't wash those legs, just running around with their dogs out.
I know. It's pretty white. It's a pretty white thing. It's like
you wash your legs?
I wash my legs, but I don't take off my shoes in the plane like a lot of white people do.
Yeah, that is a white thing.
But so Jane Whitney, I killed her career or contributed. Then I was on Montel Williams' show.
Oh dear,
his show ultimately, got shit canned. I was on Mark Wahlberg, not Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, Mark Wahlberg, but Mark Wahlberg on Temptation Island. Yep. That's what he does killed now. That. He had a show, killed that. Now he's on Temptation Island. What I'm trying to think, there's somebody else.
Billy Bush, I think. Oh no, that was somebody else.
No, I didn't do that. I was asked to come on Jerry Springer, and I refused. Thank God, to do that. Back in early when Springer started his show, I actually did get a call. I was in the middle of doing the anti-David Duke work that I started doing in Louisiana when I got out of college, and they wanted to have me on. And he had just launched his program, and they said, it's a new show. It's going to be sort of like Donahue. Oh, Donahue, by the way, literally 3 months after I did the Donahue show, this guy who was on television for like 100 years lost his program, and it wasn't because of me. It was because he spoke out against the Gulf War. But the timing, I don't think, was coincidental.
No, but the bit is working. So who else?
So no, I think that's it.
Didn't you actually literally kill Larry King with your own hands?
I might. Is he dead? He is dead. That's
right. You blew on him.
Now I've lost my train of thought. Where was I before? I said Donahue?
Media and my question is now about I'll get invited places and often tell them you should have this person or that person. And I'm always like, you're such a great guest. I always love when you come on the show. Everybody loves when you come on. You're always going to be great. And so why aren't you invited on?
Well, what's funny is every time I'm on those programs, the rare occasions when I get on CNN or when I get on MSNBC, I will hear from the producers that they loved it. They got great feedback.
Sure.
So I don't know what it is, to be honest, because if you're getting good feedback, if people are liking it, you're not getting. I'm hearing nothing.
I can tell you what it is because I've been there. I literally have been there.
Then you tell me.
Wasn't Tim great today? Yeah, we love Tim. And then you go to the boss, and they're like, I don't know if we should be having that guy on. He's very, he's very divisive. Of course, that's what executives. I remember when I booked you on CNN, I was only hosting that show for 8 weeks, so I was like,
it's because of me.
Well,
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
You were on week 7.
Very nice of you to still hang out with me and bring me out here all the way to Vegas.
But I mean, I remember thinking, just always testing the waters there. I mean, the only no I got was from CNN executive was I wanted to show flag draped coffins coming back from Afghanistan after 10 years of war there. I thought that, and they, all the producers in the room were like, well, you don't do that. But so I was like, I want to book Tim Wise, and then you just slipped through the cracks. Like I was waiting for them, like, oh, that guy's on a list somewhere. But no, I mean, I like you on. I know Joe Rogan's never going to have you on, but like all those right wing, hugely popular shows, having you on would be an amazing thing. But they don't invite you on.
They're not going to do it. No, and there would have been a time.
Would you go on the like right wingiest of right wingers, Ben Shapiro?
So here's the thing.
I don't want you to go on their show, so you'll kill their careers.
I am not right. Clearly, that's maybe not a bad idea. That might work. No, but I would probably do it now for some. I wouldn't just go on anybody's show, but I would probably do, I don't know. Ben Shapiro is an interesting case because on the one hand, I find him utterly despicable. On the other hand, I also think that I could engage in a conversation with him that wouldn't be productive vis-a-vis him. I mean, it's not going to do anything for him,
but for his audience to hear
it wouldn't do much for them either. But it would make my audience very happy. It would make the people on my team very happy, and I might enjoy doing it. But I don't know that I would. I once was asked to debate Ben, and I used to be the guy for many years. Who, if you wanted somebody to debate a right winger, I was going to be the guy.
You've debated everybody.
I've debated Dinesh D'Souza 8 times. I've debated. I've debated Ward Connerly, the black conservative businessman in California that led the anti-affirmative action charge out there. They used to always have me debate like conservatives of color. It was like, let's get the white leftist and the right wing black guy. That'll be interesting. That was my beat for a while. But I was willing to do it, even though I knew that these were sort of pissing contests. I knew they weren't very productive. And I was asked to debate Ben at C Santa Barbara, and I told them, I said, listen, I will come. And I will sit on a stage with Ben, but I don't want to have a debate. We're not going to debate whether systemic racism is a thing. I'm not going to debate whether white privilege is a thing. What I will do is engage in a conversation where the rules are, we're not debating. This is not to say what you believe. It is to say why you believe it. In other words, I think it would actually be very productive for people on the right and people on the left not to get into these pissing contests, but to sit and say, look, the topic is systemic racism, or the topic is whatever the topic is. You're not going to bring out evidence for your side. You're not going to argue analytically why you know you're right, and then I'm going to do the same on my side. What we're going to do is say, we know you don't believe in this. We know you do. Just tell us why. And the rule is you can't say, well, because it's true, and here's my evidence. Like the rule would be, no, what is it about you personally that makes you feel this way? Because I can tell you, and I don't know if Ben is self-aware enough to do it, but I can tell you why I believe white privilege is a thing is because I've been a lifelong recipient of it. I have seen it in action. The reason I know systemic racism is real is because of the experiences that I've had, the things that I've seen. It's not because of a class I took. It's not because of an article that I read. It's not because I've studied it more than the people on the other side. I may have, but that's not why I believe it. I believe it because when I look at the evidence, something in my story allows me to see the truth of the evidence, and something in Ben Shapiro's story does not allow him to see the truth in the same evidence. So he and I can look at the same stuff, and he'll come up with one spin and I'll come up with mine. And neither one of us are purely objective. And I'm really honest about that. I'm not saying I'm smarter than Ben. I mean, I am smarter than Ben, but I'm not saying I'm smarter than Ben. I am saying that, but I'm not saying that, although I am. But the fact that I'm right about that is not because I'm just inherently smarter than Ben Shapiro. It is because something about my personal experience has allowed me to see certain truths. And I think that's true for every one of us. In fact, the research from social psychology is very clear on this. And the research from brain science is very clear that the way our brains come to the way that we develop our political views, the way that we develop our ideologies is not objective. It's not the result of, well, we just read all the books and this is what's true. No, it is because something about our upbringing, something about our experiences, and a lot of that's random. A lot of that's just luck, right? And so I think if Ben and I could have that conversation, even though at the end of the day, he's going to go away him and I'm going to go away me, and we're not going to change anybody in the room. You know what might change would be that you would lower the temperature a little bit, right, between people who are on different sides of the aisle politically, and you would allow each other to see each other's humanity. That is important. And if we don't do that, progressivism has no hope in this country. Because if we cannot get to a place where I can see the humanity even in somebody who will not extend it to others. Ben Shapiro, for instance, refuses to extend basic understanding of humanity to the Palestinian people. He's done it all of his professional career. He simply will not do it. Charlie Kirk will not extend humanity, in my estimation, to black and brown folks in this country or anywhere else around the world. But if progressivism is going to have a chance, I have to be able to see the humanity in those people, and I need to know what their story is.
Yes,
I want to know what their story is, because if I understood their story, I'm not going to like them and I'm not going to want to hang out with them. But I at least will be able to say, okay, I bet your story is a lot like millions of other people's stories. And if I want to reach them before they get to the point of Charlie Kirk, before they get to the point of Ben Shapiro, because that's the end game. Nobody starts like that, right? Just like nobody starts like me, right? Like you start off with just ideas that you get from home or you get from friends or things that happen. So I would do that. And of course, when I offered that, Ben Shapiro had no interest in that whatsoever.
Well, joining us now, Ben Shapiro and Scott Jennings. Come on in, gentlemen.
You will know Ben, but only if you're a dog will you be able to hear his voice.
Oh, that's not
because
fair.
It's like a whistle.
Also, he comes in a stroller, which I think is
yes.
We're pretty much out of time, but I want to keep going just for questions. Does anybody have any questions for Tim Wise besides Vicky? Do we have any white people that?
My question is real simple, and I do appreciate the work that you've done. Yeah. But I always think about your family. So how do they cope with all that goes on with you? Are any of your children interested in walking in your footsteps?
Well, my children are both, one has just completed a BFA in dance and the other is getting her BFA in dance. So they're not walking in my footsteps and I don't dance like that. Like they're really good. I mean, I have rhythm for a white guy, but they dance. Like they're really, really good. So they certainly have the values that their mom and I both instilled in them. But I don't think they're going to. I mean, my oldest daughter did minor in she was a BFA dance and film studies major, and I think her minor was human rights. So she studies the stuff. She was at a dance program at Ohio State University that is very deliberately an anti-racist dance program, at least as of today. They may be forced to change that. Yeah, they may be. I mean, I think they're going to try to resist as long as they can, although Ohio State has just gotten rid of their DEI office, which was created in 1971. So it's not even like a new thing. It's been there a really long time. They both share the values. It's not what they want to do. It's not their passion, which I think is good. I get a little nervous when folks just want to do what their parents did, even if they think their parents are really cool. My dad, who I now get along with and have a relationship with, but didn't for many years, he was an actor and a stand-up comic. That's what he did. And I sometimes struggle with what I do, which is performative. It is performative. And for a critical race theorist, I'm relatively funny. So it's like, I mean, it's hard to be a critical race theorist and be funny because white supremacy is not a humorous topic. But when I do things like that and when I am funny, there are times that I get a little, because of my story with my father, I don't always feel right about it. Plus, it's really serious shit that I talk about too. So I use humor as a tool to open people up to hearing it. But I never wanted to be what my dad was. And I don't really want my girls. If they wanted to be, I'd be ecstatic, but I would be a little worried that they weren't breaking out on their own, and they are doing a great job of breaking out on their own. So I'd rather them stay on that path, personally.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question for Tim? Eric Siegel, ladies and gentlemen, who was here yesterday. Eric is a regular on the show. I don't know if you know Eric's work. He's a con law scholar at Georgia State. Yeah. And do you want to yell it, or you can just come up here?
Thank you.
Come up here and use the mic because I'm recording it. Yep. Wow, you're taller than I thought. Here.
Huge fan, really. His work is unbelievable. Thank you. I've had two experiences in the last 6 months that I've never had before, involving debates, both of which with people of color, both of which on affirmative action, both of which they were taking positions that were unbelievably ludicrous, insane, and every sentence was filled with a lie. Every single sentence. Right. And I hadn't had that before in my career. I mean, even debating abortion and affirmative action for 40 years. Yeah. It's a different tone. Yeah. And I didn't know how to do it. And I handled it terribly because I couldn't. I felt bad for Hillary and for Kamala, because how do you debate someone who lies every sentence? Yeah. And I'm curious if you have any tips when you're dealing with somebody who lies every sentence.
Yeah, I try, but that's one of the reasons I stopped debating Dinesh D'Souza, because he lies he lies in his sleep. I mean, this is someone who, I stopped because it got to be absurd. And I do think that's one of the things about debating, right, that isn't really helpful. Because if you're telling me what you think, you are invested in proving that you're right. You're not invested in listening. If, on the other hand, we were saying, like, tell me why you think that, it's a different conversation. And even if this person is filled with stupidity, you're not going to go away thinking, my God, that was such a waste of my time. You might actually think it was a valuable use of your time. This is the advice that I give to college students when I'm on campuses for speeches, and it's around early November, and they're all getting ready to go home for Thanksgiving. And they always want to know, always. They're like, oh, Jesus, I got an uncle. Oh. And this uncle, whose name is always Bill. I don't know why this is true. It's always an uncle. It's never the father. It's the father's racist brother. Always. Nobody's got a racist dad or mom or aunt.
Sometimes it's the father.
It's usually, every story I hear, they always say it's the uncle, even though it probably is their dad.
Right.
And the uncle's horrible, and he's going to be spouting Fox talking points, and what do I do? And my advice has always been not to debate. And the last thing I said, well, first off, don't crack out the intersectional feminism 101 textbook that you got up at the college, because your uncle ain't ready for bell hooks. Like, I know this, like I'd like for your uncle to be able to read bell hooks, but today is not the day. So we're not going to start there. I said, you're going to need to ask them why they think what it is, whatever absurd thing they say. And so that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that? Because what I have learned in my experience is that when people are asked why they believe things, usually, A, they haven't really thought about it. And B, especially if they're saying really stupid shit, when they start to explain why they believe it, you can see on their face that they know how stupid the shit they're saying actually is. Like, they're not going to tell you, oh my God, I'm an idiot, but their face is going to betray a recognition that they don't actually know what they're talking about. And that is very satisfying, actually. So I think you just have to decide when those fights are worth having. And a lot of times they're just not. But it is always interesting to find out why someone thinks what they think. And so if it's a person of color, for instance, who's deeply offended or whatever by affirmative action and opposed to affirmative action, I want to know what that story is. I really do. Because my guess, and I try to have sympathy in that moment, because I realize there is a deep incentive that anyone raised in this country has to believe that A, I can do it all on my own with no help, and B, I did it all on my own with no help. That we are deeply invested in that. Yeah. And that isn't just white men who want to believe. Everybody wants to believe that. Black folks want to believe that. Women of all colors want to believe that, even if they know deep down it might be everybody had help. None of us were born on an island and raised by a porpoise. Right? Like, if you actually ever encounter something that qualifies as a rugged individual, you need to get the fuck away from that thing, because it's going to be feral. It's going to eat you. It's not going to know any of the rules, right? Like, it's going to just eat you alive, because no one ever taught it. Like, don't eat that person. So nobody's a rugged individual. Everyone's had help, but people have been propagandized to not want to accept that. Right. Some of that help has been racially coded. Some of it has been mentors. Some of it has been the third grade teacher that believed in you when nobody else did, the soccer coach, the whatever, right? We've all had help. But if you have been led to believe that asking for help or acknowledging help is somehow a sign of weakness, whether you're a white male, a white woman, whether you're a person of color, it doesn't matter. There will be an incentive for you to say, by God, if I can have succeeded at all in life, it's just because I'm that damn smart. And so I understand the pull of that for a person of color. I get it. I understand why white women, when affirmative action was on the ballot in California in 1996, Prop 209, and all the mainstream liberal Democratic Party folks were like, well, we'll just tell these white women that affirmative action is critical to them. And they didn't want to talk about race. They didn't want to talk about racism. They just wanted to appeal to white women on the basis of the benefits of affirmative action to white women, which are prodigious. Like, white women have, in fact, benefited the most from it. But I knew going in it was a losing strategy. And the reason I knew it was a losing strategy was because white women didn't want to admit that they had benefited from affirmative action. And so if you appeal to them on the basis of that, they're going to resent it, and they're going to end up identifying more with their husbands, their sons, their brothers, their fathers, whose interests they believe are harmed by affirmative action. You can't talk around the real issue, which is anti-blackness. You can't talk around racism. You got to go through it. And I think that the mistake we make sometimes is not being prepared for those people who we think ought to think one way, because most of the people we know like them maybe think that way, and then we're shocked. But we ought not be shocked, because black folks were raised in this country too, right? Brown folk been raised in this country. The fact that you've got Enrico Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, right? The fact that he's a Latino mid. So why are you shocked by that? First of all, there's a long history of white supremacy within Latino circles. It's not shocking. In Central and South America, anti-blackness is deeply, deeply ingrained in the consciousness of Latino communities. But also, even if it hadn't been, you spend enough time here, you know, even if you didn't have it where you came from, even if it wasn't part of your larger history, you're going to learn it here. And black folk will internalize it against themselves. We've seen the research on subconscious bias that like 45% of black folks manifest subconscious implicit bias against other black people, because you cannot colonize land without colonizing brains. You colonize the property between the ears as well as you colonize the land itself. And so I always have it was always aggravating debating all the anti-affirmative action people of color they could find for me to debate. But I also had a certain degree. I didn't have sympathy for Dinesh. Fuck him. But Ward Connerly and these other, black conservatives, I did actually have a certain degree of compassion for, because I knew that they had been fed this all of their lives. Yeah. And why should I assume that they are superhuman in their ability to resist it? Really, what's shocking is the fact that most black and brown folks do know better. That speaks to the resilience and the strength and the and the persistence of black and brown folks to resist, because the lure of it has got to be strong. We ought to be shocked that more black folks don't love Trump. We ought to be shocked that more brown folk don't love Trump. Everybody acts, oh my God, why are they voting for Trump? Why are you shocked? Everything this man says is what America has been saying from the beginning. He hasn't had an original thought in his life. It's like he opened up the political playbook of American politics, and on page 1, it said, convince poor white people that their enemies are black and brown. And he was like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm running that play every day, all the time, every single time. And that's what he's done. Why would we be shocked that some black and brown folk who would hear that would go, damn right, I want to be a part of that?
Well, thank you. Great question. Amazing answer. The only thing I want to say here at the end is I personally have benefited so much from you and your expertise and your appearances on my show for over 10 years. And now, over the past few years, a really seriously cool friendship. You and I have become good friends, and I love you and I respect you. And I'm so grateful to you for being here. You're going to join us tonight, I hope. You'll come out.
I will.
Give it up for Tim Wise, everybody. Come on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tim Wise, everybody. Bye. Yeah, there he was, Tim Wise from Podjam last week. Hopefully you appreciated that as much as the folks in attendance. That is all I've got for you on today's episode of Stand Up. It's great to be back here with you. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks to everybody who joined us at last night's Hangout. If you want to watch it, you can click on the link that you should get as a subscriber in your email. If you're not getting that, well, let me know. Check those credit cards. It is here at the beginning of the month. Make sure that I'm able to make a living here doing stand-up. This ad-free show is supported by you, but not if your credit card doesn't go through. That's it. That's all. I will talk to you tomorrow right here. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening today. You bumblebees, I love you. Bye-bye.
Knees, you gotta stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light.